or forward? Does it matter?
You know what? You are totally good to count however you want as long as it's to 5.
50, 49,
There you go.
48, 47. The other day, Gracie was in the, she's been here all summer. She's been spending her money like crazy. So she was counting all of her change. She's like 10 years of collecting quarters in her room or whatever she's done. She's counting all of it so she can have some money to go back to college. And she's in there and counting and counting. And I came through and just started yelling out numbers.
Not her all. Had to start over.
Completely threw her off. Leah, you monitoring Facebook for us so we can see the comments with any Q&A that might happens to come in? I'll take that as a yes, I've got that.
Yes, all is good and running, and the comments are up. And if you have any questions, post them in the comments on Facebook or the Q&A here.
All right, so we should be live on Facebook at this point. So welcome everybody to Coach's Corner. We've got David Pierce with us today, and we got Mr. Comiso from San Francisco, California, here to answer your questions. So I wanted to hear what's on your mind. Guys, I'd like to start with a quick little kind of analogy that I've been thinking about here recently is you've heard me tell the story of the buffalo and the cows. David, you're surrounded by a bunch of cows, maybe not so many buffalo, but out on, in the Western Plains, there's these huge areas of vast lands, and there's cattle, cows, and there's buffalo that roam on these lands. And every now and then this gigantic storms will flow in over the tops of the mountains. And the cows will look at that storm and literally like huddle up into these small packs and wait for the storm to completely pass over the top of them. By inverse, the buffalo will get in a line and they'll look at that storm and they'll run as hard and as fast as they can directly into it. And they're looking to minimize the pain. So they recognize the storm's coming over the mountain, they get in formation, and they run directly through the storm as quickly as possible. Evolution has taught them if we run towards the storm, we're able to get through the pain much more quickly. And I think that's a little bit poignant of what we're going through right now in the current situation. A lot of businesses, individuals, there's storms brewing. Some of us are in the middle of them. If we can act more like buffalo and run hard and fast, as opposed to like cows or cattle and just huddle and wait, I think we can weather the storm much more rapidly. What do you think, DP?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we are, I think we're still in the storm. I think we can run as fast as we can, but it's still going to be a while no matter what. I've been doing a lot of reading. I'm the accountant and the old banker, so I've been reading a lot of economic reports and banking reports lately, and I'll kind of go over this a little bit later if you want me to, but there are several scenarios, none of which are quick ends to this thing. So I think that's kind of where my position is what do we need to do as leaders of our companies to prepare ourselves to weather this storm that's still going to be out there. And unfortunately, it's going to be one of those hurricane situations. It's not going to go away quickly. I don't know when it is, but we need to be prepared for some length of time to deal with this thing.
You're specifically talking about from a financial perspective.
Primarily an economic recovery perspective.
But when you read through all that data and information, there's obviously they do scenario plans. So this could happen or this could happen. What do you read in there?
Yeah,
educated best guess.
One of the experts, that we rely on that have pretty good information is McKinsey puts out reports on economic recovery and that kind of thing. So I was reading one this week. They talk about 3 scenarios. One's a muted recovery, world recovery. It takes through the end of 23 before we really get back to some normalcy. One is more optimistic, but still not till the end of 21. And their bad one is recession through the end of 2025. So none of those are quick turnarounds, even in their optimistic economic recovery. Now, each sectors are going to recover differently. Obviously, we know that, but overall, it's a year and a half in best case before we get back to some kind of comprehensive recovery across all industries. So we need to be prepared for this. Yeah, economic recovery.
And Mark, you're out on the West Coast, and there's this, you know, kind of old economic philosophy that says, follow the housing market and you will follow the economy. And then it goes even deeper and says, and the housing market starts on the West Coast.
You know, it is, I would agree with you. You know, that is an old adage that when you look at it, that seems to follow true. You know, what we're seeing out here is that, you know, especially on, I watch two things out here on the housing market side of things and how it impacts business. On the housing market, there's the purchases, you know, what's the volume? What's going on? You know, how many people are putting their house up? How many are moving? How long are they staying on the market? You know, just to give indicators of kind of what's the motion of things. And things have slowed down greatly. It is like the market. It's kind of in that storm, right? Things have slowed down. They haven't slowed to a stop, though. I think it's related to the anecdote you were talking about in there, Andy, of, you know, just the cows stop, right? Versus the buffalo that keep moving. And I'm seeing with businesses kind of related to that it's the ones that keep some motion going, the motions they can, right? There's a lot of things we all can't control, but there's so many we can. And it's about saying, well, why shut down everything, right? That's what cow does, just stops everything. It's that motion forward that's really moving people. And in our housing market, there is some motion. That's nice to see that it hasn't just stopped. It's gone down significantly, but you know, the people that are going to weather that storm are the ones that say, all right, what are the things we can do? Let's move through those and, you know, see some successes in those and keep moving a little bit forward.
What's interesting about your comment, and you're in the city, right? So
yep.
you in the city, and I'm outside of Nashville, 20 miles. Louisville is, you know, not a city. I wouldn't consider it a MSA on anybody's map. But there's, you know, this exodus from the city and into the suburbs. I can tell you in the county here where I live, home sales are double what they were the same time last year.
Mm-hmm.
The number of people moving here right now, it's a, you know, seller's market for sure. And you got kind of the opposite happen. I think it could be a little bit of the city versus the suburbs at play.
Yeah, I think certainly some of it is, and again, relates to business some, but it's, you know, you have to read the market, if you will, right? And the market is on the housing market right now is, you know, people don't want to be nearby each other right now. You know, that's not a good condition. So this whole idea of, and what people used to really enjoy about the city, whether it be San Francisco or New York or LA, wherever you are, was that a lot of people were together. Right now, that's not a good thing. And also, I mean, again, you know, we can talk about this and how it relates to business, but adapting to, you know, the new environments, right, is people are now accustomed to working from home. In the past, that was a barrier. Saying you're going to be a work from home person, people will be, oh, you know, are you really getting your job done? Are you just doing it because you want to be lazy, whatever? And now we've all done it. Now people are like, wow, I don't have to live near this congregation of other people that I come to the office every day. I can live, you know, in another location, still get the work done. And, you know, that's being seen as a positive now. So it's really interesting to see how all these things kind of come together. And again, if you're a business that's moving, you're seeing these things, you're watching and adapting to these new transitions in, you know, the workforce.
I think a lot of the housing right now is replacement and not new housing. So I don't know if that's a great indicator or not, but people are upsizing because they've got cheap rates and they can get into a new area that wasn't available. I'm moving from the city to the suburbs, but the net new growth, I don't know if that's there.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So I've got one topic that I want to toss out on the table for conversation, because I think it's something everybody's got in their minds. But I do want to remind everybody, if you're listening in on this on Zoom, you can use the Q&A section, or you can use chat to put in your questions. So if you've got, we do this every day with companies all over the world. So if you're dealing with something in your life, in your business, stick it in there so we can help you solve it. One of the things that's coming up is return to schools, right? So you see it on the news every time you watch something. Some schools have gone completely online. What are you doing? Is it all online out there in San Francisco, I assume?
Yep, we're all online.
All right. Louisville.
Here's what we're seeing. Public schools are all online. Private schools, many of them have opted to go in person. And we think it's fear of loss of tuition. protecting their self, because it's so much easier to stay home. It's no cost if you go public systems. So it's going to be interesting how that dynamic plays out.
Well, certainly follow the money applies to lots of things.
Yeah.
You know, we got school systems that are opening. I talked to someone earlier today. They were doing like these kids are going to go on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then they're going to be online the other 3, and the other go 3, and then there's going to be online 2. I've heard 4-10s, so groups of students go in for 4 days, and then they're out for 10, and then they rotate through that. So there's lots of ways to tackle this particular issue. However, the fallout from that is kids are still going to be at home at some level. So, how do you deal with essentially homeschooling, right? You still have curriculum, you still have a teacher on a screen for a part of the day, but somebody's got to be around with the kid, unless they're, 14 years old and a junior or senior in high school. Maybe you don't, maybe you do. But I know working parents are dealing with this in masses right now. So what have you seen? What have you heard? What are some solutions that you've come up with? And I would love to hear anybody that's listening in, what solutions you've seen or heard, because this challenge is upon us, and it's going to, in 3 weeks, everybody's going to be the realization is going to be here. David, you want to tackle first?
Yeah, I think it's a continuation kind of what's going on right now. And I think employers are going to need to be more flexible with their employees and allow them to work unusual hours, at least until there's a solution to this thing. Meaning I may not come in till 1 o'clock because I'm going to spend the morning schooling my kids, and then my spouse is going to be there in the afternoon, and we're going to reverse our schedules. Also, I'm seeing an opportunity, people that run these summer camps and daycare, whatever, things that they typically only do during the holiday season, the off season, they're ramping up and creating school curriculum based camps, and they're going to hold camps for certain limited numbers, just like they did in the summer, but based on the school curriculum and not some kind of arts and crafts type thing. So I'm seeing some opportunities for entrepreneurs out there to expand their operations into this to meet a need, because there's definitely a need there.
So you've seen a typical summer camp now go, hey, we're going to be open year round, and we're going to do curriculum based activities, not just the finger painting or whatever.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to toss in there, Andy, that I've seen out here actually have some friends that are teachers at some schools around here, and they're, they are going all online, and they're looking at how can we, supplement the things that we're doing. And they're actually creating a group of teachers that are coming together saying, hey, we're going to do, this, we're going to do all the protocols necessary. And we're going to put together, as you mentioned, like a 4-10 schedule, right? So that as teachers, they can make sure that they're both as safe, but also can communicate to the parents and the families interacting with that they don't have this. And what they're doing is putting together a location. One of the teachers actually happens to have a large home, and she's putting together separate rooms where they're going to be able to bring groups of kids together, and they're looking at, they have not figured this out. So I think it's an opportunity for educators or other people who are in this space to figure out systems that say, how can we help? There's a huge need for this. How can we help, parents who are in this situation that's way outside of what anybody ever thought of before? So again, they've got separate rooms in this house. They're going to have separate teachers in there and kids, not intermingling the kids, but just, 4 to 5 kids in a room, and they're going to go through and spend half the day doing different activities, some education. It's not a school curriculum. It's more of a engage the kids and give parents the opportunity to do the things they need to do.
Yeah. Now, both of those solutions are outside in. So, that's a little bit of, I'm a pretty straightforward person. That's a little bit of cows. That's, as the parent, I'm waiting on a teacher to make a decision to do something. As a parent, I'm waiting on a camp to make a decision to do something. I think this is, it's not like this is brand new news. This has been around for a long time. We could see this coming. We need to be doing stuff about this as a parent. My kids are not young, and I don't need to do this, but we do have people in our organization. The thing that I've seen the most effective is finding someone to actually intervene and do that work. So hiring someone, if it's not something that you can do, could you put together 3 or 4 families with kids and split the costs of doing it? Now, the other piece is, flexibility. There are businesses that don't have flexibility to a point where you can go to work at 1 o'clock. You're going to have to figure out how to do that. And if you've got to get somebody else in there to help you with that structure, then you need to find a way to get somebody else in there to help you with that structure. Do you have some thoughts about how we go about doing that?
Well, I think one of them is college kids are also going to be doing things virtually, and they've got a lot of flex time on when they can complete their schedules. And just like a nanny type thing, there's a plenty of opportunity for them to go in with homes that they may already be working with, at times of babysitting or whatever, to offer that service and still be able to meet the needs, the demands they've got on their schedule. They've got a lot of free time now that they would typically be going to class and hanging out with sororities and fraternities, which isn't happening anymore right now. So that's one good solution.
So college campuses and work the college campus system to find someone that's in school, potentially they're online too, and they're getting their stuff done that would be part-time. You might look full-time as well. Mark, do you have some thoughts?
Well, I think one of the other approaches, Andy, like you're saying, is, let's look at, those, I know in this era there's a lot of 2 working parents, but not always. And so this idea of, looking at and saying, okay, we've all heard of how are you gonna build your pod, right, or your bubble. But finding, other classmates, and maybe there is one parent in, you can put together some families that you can create your bubble. This is what we've done, is created this bubble, right, of just a small group. And not only does it help, if there is one person who maybe they aren't employed right now, maybe they were and they aren't now, or they weren't before and they were a stay at home if they had that opportunity, but to take advantage of that and bring the kids together, it's not only can that give the parents that are working the opportunity to work, but it's also an opportunity, the social aspect of it, right? It's okay if you have this bubble of people, the kids can now interact, because it is impacting them and the adults too, of just this social distancing is very, very difficult on our psyches. So not only the educational part, not only the ability to work, but can we, have these bubble groups that my wife and I and our family are connected with are, now we can finally have some, somebody over, and distance dinners, but at least we know that we're in the bubble. So, building this pod yourself, saying, hey, you know what, you're a family we've known from the school, or you are over here. Can we get these 3 families together? Or, let's, make sure we know where everybody's been. We're going to, talk about that, be very open and communicative. Maybe we're getting testing done, however your setup is, but setting up a system that allows for both the kids, the work, and the social aspect all to come together.
It's kind of one way to look at that too, especially in our neighborhoods. They have it's kind of the old play groups on steroids. You got the moms or the dads just get together if they're at home, work at home, and they put certain families together, and the kids can play together, and the adults socialize. You can kind of take those same groups that are protected, the families, you generally, feel comfortable around them, and what they've may have been exposed to. You're already doing that on a social basis, probably anyway, with 2 or 3 families, is kind of putting the play groups together. But like I said, on steroids, it's going to be a curriculum oriented, and one adult is going to do it this week and another adult's going to do it next week. And it could work. I think that could work as well.
What's, and again, anybody who's listening, please put your questions in chat. We'd love to have your experience shared here as well. What is the line in, you guys are with businesses all day. What's the business's responsibility and what's the team member's responsibility?
From which aspect do you mean, Andy? Their responsibility for?
Yeah, like this is a challenge. It's a challenge with team members on. We have it on our team. Like what's the responsibility of the business and what's the responsibility of the individual? There's only so much business can do. And we can do a lot, but there's a point at which, and that's why I come back to the buffalo and the cow story. It's like there people, I see so much frozen right now, like just
Hmm.
Generally speaking, people that normally would just go solve whatever the challenge might be that's in front of them, I just see them not moving.
Mhm.
And to me, it just, it irritates me that we can't get that forward movement. And we have to individually look at it, in my opinion, individually look at things and say, what am I going to do to solve that? What am I going to do? Rather than this continues to be my situation. Okay, yeah, it's your situation. The economy, end of year next year, 3 years, 5 years. That's the situation. What are you going to do about it? You're not going to. Are we just going to wait around, or are we going to do something? What's the business's responsibility? What's the individual's responsibility?
I think in the business side, just like, we help companies build cultures that engage and endear their employees to them, they need to do all they can do within reason. But you can't go to the nth level if it's going to detrimentally impact your ability to survive as a business. So you can't let everybody be off, 40 hours a week, because it's just not going to work. So develop a plan that's workable within your business, and then communicate that very clearly, and really just kind of say, are you with it or not? And if not, let's look for some other options. So obviously we always talk about being very transparent, what you can do, what you can't do, and get everybody involved in the decision and the solution process. And every business is going to be different. Some businesses can really afford to do a lot more than others, but you got to work within your capabilities, but make everybody a part of the solution within your business, and then live with that.
Yeah, I think too, if you've got a group of people that are in this situation, I had a call last week with somebody who had 22 team members that all had, middle school or elementary school kids. That's a pretty large group in and of itself to put together a system in and of itself. But I'm not sure that it's the responsibility, nor should it be done by the business. Like, it feels like it's more of a community effort inside of the organization, maybe facilitated by the business with ideas and information and introduction, and then the solution would come from the 22 people.
Yeah.
Rather than, and again, you got to be a little bit of a builder to go make that happen. It's going to have to take a little bit of leadership. But people, we just don't need to wait for something to happen any longer.
Agree.
Yeah, I think, Andy, when you talk about it, and I think the responsibility is the parent. I mean, at the end of the day, they are your children, right? I think that business has an opportunity to be a participant in it, right? Like you said, is providing, maybe resources, maybe funding, maybe, that flexibility in schedules. I think there's a lot of things as business owners that we can do to help support that. I think it's kind of a, coming together, right? I don't think it's all any one responsibility or the other. I think success will be when businesses are flexible and participatory in these things, and parents are proactive instead of just being reactive to, kind of that, here and in other places, but kind of that victim mentality of, I'm just kind of gonna wait, right? As parents, I think we have to, step up and step in and move forward and look for those opportunities and see if the businesses can support us in different ways. And the businesses have to reach out a little bit too.
Well, we'll switch gears. Let's talk about money matters for just a minute. So I'll bring it back around to some of the stuff that you guys have been knee deep in with some of the changes from Congress and the votes that are up and what you've been hearing. But I want to start with something fairly simplistic or simple in just cash conversion, right? So if we think about business today, individuals that work in companies, especially if you're on the finance side, even if you're not on the finance side, you should be concerned about how quickly are we collecting dollars that are in the marketplace today. One of you guys want to tackle a little bit of cash conversion cycle, what that actually means, and then maybe some tips on how to get money in the door faster?
Yeah, it's always a challenge, especially in times like this when everybody's holding their cash as much as possible. A couple of things I've seen work is to go unconventional.
Can you tell us about cash conversion cycle?
Cash conversion cycle basically is how long does it take for you to get the dollar back? When you sell something, to get that dollar back in your business so you can reinvest back in your business. That's typically 30 to 45 days under normal cycles, depending on if you have to manufacture or if you're just reselling a product. But 30 to 60 days is your typical cash conversion cycle. A dollar goes out and it comes back with a little profit on it, you can reinvest. That's slowed down, obviously, because everybody's cash constrained right now. So I've seen some success with going unconventional, meaning we had this conversation last night in our forum group. Was a very good conversation. Is looking for ways to reach people outside of just, hey, can you pay me? It's looking for a way to further endear them to you in some form or fashion. You know, a recognition of, I know you're going through a tough time. Why don't we get together and talk about solutions? Maybe even finding, I'll tell you a big thing I've seen is if you can endear the family of somebody that you're a customer that you're working with, send them a nice little gift or do something that kind of endears them and doing it with be genuine about it. But there's nothing more precious than somebody doing something good for my family. So I'm going to probably pay you first if I got to start making decisions just because of that. So we've got to look for unconventional ways to make an impression and endear your customers to you and do it in a genuine way. It also builds a long-term relationship too. So do the things that we should be doing anyway, but now we really need to step up our game and do those kind of things. And there's some creative things you can do. If you're still in paper invoicing, is you send different color invoices. Some reason that gets more attention. Maybe some with unique terms, those kind of things. So look for unconventional communication methods that you wouldn't typically use more so than ever. And don't be afraid to get out of the box and go to families and that kind of thing. So I've seen that with success.
We used to do this at the other company that I started, the NationLink, is our invoices were blue.
Yeah.
The reason that they were blue was because we would form a relationship with the AP person, the person paying the bills. Yeah. And when we call, we would say, hey, can you look in that stack of paper there? Look for the blue one. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like this is paper stacks, right? So it wasn't just, can you find my invoices? Just grab the blue one because there's only going to be one blue.
Yeah.
So that's how you get, you can get. That's why the color piece of that matters.
One other thing, easy one, is to shorten your billing cycle. If you typically bill once a week or once every 15 days, do it daily. At least if you get 30% of your customers paying earlier, you're that much better off. So change your billing, even if you got to do it manually for some period of time. It's going to improve your cash flow. It's well worth the effort. So
you have a 30-day return on cash, right? So 30 days. If you're waiting for a week to send those out, to your point, you get an entire week back if you're normally 30 days. So you can collect your cash a week faster if you'll just bill it on a daily basis. I mean, that's a simple thing to go do. Mark, do you have any thoughts on how to get money in the door faster?
Yeah, it was interesting. You mentioned, Andy, in your previous business doing them on blue. One of the things that we did in my previous agency was we would, as part of our kickoff to any of the projects that we were doing, we would tell the organization that we were working with that we wanted to have an accounting representative as part of the kickoff. Right? Which it never happened. They were always like, well, why do you want that person? We said, because they're part of your team. And an important part of this process is to make sure that we all understand what's going on. And yes, here's our accounting person, the person that handles how, we get compensated and compensate others. And it was funny. All of the AP people were like, we never get included in anything. So just the fact that we paid attention to them and gave them some recognition of being part of the team, whenever we called later on saying we did two things, and this goes to the same thing. Not only would we invoice faster, we did do that. Instead of doing monthly, we did every other week. And we would reach out. We had it set up on a schedule. We would send the invoice out, and 5 days later, we would send an email saying, hey, Sally or Tom or whoever that person is, and now I've got a personal connection. Hey, Tom, we sent this out on Monday. Just want to make sure you got it. Can you give me a quick confirmation? And again, because we built a rapport, they were very quick to respond. We knew they had it because before that, we had struggled. That we would wait the 30 days and then we wouldn't get a payment. And then we call them and they go, oh, we didn't see it. Or when did you send it over? Where is it? And then the cycle started again. The 30 days started from that point, not from the day that we sent it. Because like, oh, now I'm putting it into the system. So just, making sure that you communicate, hey, we sent this across. Did you get it? Just quick confirmation. Make sure that it's in the system, in the cycle. And we found it really reduced the amount of time that we had, accounts receivable out.
So there's another thing you can do is just on a sticky note, just write thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
If you take your little paper invoice, and I know a lot of people are doing this electronically, you can put a message in there too, but nothing's going to replace a little bit of a little sticky note that says, really appreciate your business. Appreciate you paying on time. And if you can preemptively do this on the invoices that go out, we used to do this early in the days of Petrocoach. I used to write on every single invoice very specialized information. And then think about the inverse of that. When you do get a check-in, this is what I've been telling people in the DSRO presentations, when you do get an invoice with a check, write a handwritten note of appreciation and mail that to the person. And just make sure you say, look, times are tough. I know that you're making decisions on who you're going to pay. We really appreciate you paying us on time with your invoices. The next time that your invoice comes in, they're going to make the decision to go back to you. So just show appreciation for the business and show appreciation for them fulfilling it with payment.
Yeah, humanize it. Right? You're a name right now, but if you humanize the relationship, it's a lot more. They're a lot more committed to working with you. Kind of a neat little example, kind of along these lines. My son does some social media stuff, and went out and did a nice little shoot out west back in the ski season with a international company actually, and he had several $1,000s of fees that had not been paid, months and months and months, and going into June. I looked up a guy, another unrelated guy. I looked up a company on LinkedIn, found the guy who would be above the guy he worked with, and sent him a personal note. Lo and behold, the guy gets paid. He got notice he's going to get paid this week. So, got to go unconventional. It's tough times. You got to find a way around the system to get your voice heard in some whatever form or fashion. LinkedIn's a great way to find as many people as you can in an organization, and email and message every one of them just to get your name heard.
I also think as we think about these things is, the fact that now we're all sheltering in place or some form of that. And, we're used to this interaction on the screen like we all are now. I think to your point, David, making this human, right, is when you're reaching out to these people, set it up on a Zoom call. Just say, hey, I'm going to reach out. So it's much, it's more of a connection to see somebody's face and go, oh, Tom, great to, put a face with a name. And it doesn't have to be long. And now people are used to that, right? Everybody's used to Zoom at this point or some form of fashion of it. That wasn't the case before. They would have looked at you weird. Why do you want to Zoom call me? Now take advantage of that. Make it human. It's kind of like you were saying, Andy, with your card is it's that handwritten real person connection that will, you got to figure out the way that you're going to get paid ahead of somebody else.
So let's talk about scaling up Rockefeller Habits, right? So this is a set of methodologies that we operate by. We work with organizations to implement an operating system based around these methodologies, things that an organization can do to reduce the chaos and improve scale at a pretty rapid pace. Mm-hmm. So let's, if somebody's going to dive into that, obviously they need to get a copy of Scaling Up. They need to read the book, which is a textbook. There's a lot of stuff in there. And it can be overwhelming. So when you're working with one of the companies that you work with, what is the first things that you would do? If I'm doing this myself and maybe I don't have a coach that I'm working with, but I'm doing it myself, what would you tell me to do first? Beyond just read the book. I got the book read. What do I need to go do inside of my organization now?
I think
I'm going to, who's going to take this? I'll take this one, David. One of the things that I tell the people that we work with and get going with, Andy, or even outside of here is, I know you said past just reading the book, but I like communicating to them a process of actually reading the book, which is Scaling Up, as you said, is a textbook. It's informative, but it's a process and a system that people haven't interacted with before. So the first thing I actually tell them is I'd like you to go through and I want you to skim read the book, meaning there's a lot of examples, there's a lot of forms and things you can fill out as you go through, right? It's asking you questions and to answer them, but I actually have them skim through it first to get the concepts and get the overview of it, and then to go back around and say, now we're going to go through it. And if you're working with Petrocoach, then we're going to help you through this process and take you through a lot of it. if they're doing it on their own, we all interact with others outside of just those that we coach, but they're going to do it on their own, then go back and actually do the worksheets and fill those out. I think it does start with the core foundational components, right? What are the core values of your business? What do we stand for? You have to know what those are and be able to understand how they impact the organization and help you do what you do. What is our core purpose? What is that meaning? Why do we come here and do this and do the things that we do, not just the what? You got to start there. Without that, you're kind of fishing around. That's the focal point for me as I get them started. David?
So let me unpack that with you for a second. I got some questions this week wrapped up in how do I, what's the return on my investment, right? So when somebody says I'm going to spend effort, energy, and sometimes expense in the implementation of this system, they want to see some sort of a return on investment. And if we tell them to start with, hey, let's look at your core foundation. We want you to define your core purpose and we want you to define your core values. How does that translate to return on investment at some level?
For me, you bring the key point, and what I like to communicate is it is an investment. Much like when you're investing dollars in the stock market or other things, is you don't always see those returns like tomorrow. Okay, maybe your stock goes up, maybe it doesn't, but you need to look at this as an investment in both the people and the organization. And what you're doing when you're looking at this foundation is you are much like, I'll use another analogy of building a house. You are looking at, hey, it's not just nail and wood together. Let's set this foundation for the structure of the organization that we want it to be based on the things that we are today. So answering your question, Andy, is that return comes over time when you're consistent with this information. If you don't have a core purpose and know what those values are as an organization, then the people you add in, the customers you interact with, the vendors you have, can be anybody, and you'll just, you won't have solid ground to work from. So the investment is, how do you build on a strong foundation instead of building on quicksand?
Can you go through, you hit a key point. So I think, yes. And what we all know is, people have a limited time in which they want to see results, right? So, we live in a society of instant gratification, which is a challenge in and of itself. However, when we go do this work, if it's core values and core purpose, and you mentioned something in your comment around, I'll call it team members and customers or clients. So how does that translate? How does your comments with foundational items translate to team members and customers so that I can see the return?
Well, what I would say on both, so I'll go team members and then customers, but on the team member side of things, I'm going to pick just as an example here on the core values side of it. If as an organization you get those core values set, and this is more than, I know we all know this, but for those that may be watching out there, core values isn't just some nice words that you throw up on the wall, right? In going through scaling up and really understanding it and working with Petra on this, is we really get into what is that thing that that core value is, and what does it mean? How does it show up? What does it mean to us as an organization? And the return you get with employees is, if you know what these core values are and can communicate it, then by being able to really communicate what those core values are, you're going to find employees. The objective is to find employees that match, right? Not perfectly on all of them, but that are in alignment with these. And then what ends up happening is you don't have as much turnover. So you want to talk about, return on your investment is you find the right people to come in and get involved, not because you tell them what things are, but because they look at it and go, that's me. I need to be here. So you get this nice confluence of, the values of the company, the values of the employee. You get less turnover. Again, are you going to say you're going to see that tomorrow? Maybe not, but anybody who's had a rough time with employees knows that.
If you're hiring pretty quickly. David, you want to unpack that a little farther?
Yeah.
How does that actually work? You got, let's assume we have a novice here that is listening that doesn't really understand, but you got a set of values, stated behaviors and principles, right, that we all agree to live by. We've agreed to that as an executive team. That's Mark says we got to go do that first. How do we put that in play with team members And he's talking about kind of in the interview process or the hiring process.
Well, it's a different way. Obviously, to build a culture, you've got to have values that everybody believes in. You can smell it when you walk in the organization. It's lived. Everybody lives it, and you've got all the team members trained on what those mean, and they believe them also. So internally, you've got to do that. From a hiring standpoint, now you've kind of got your grid. You know what kind of candidate you're looking for. You can build processes within your interviewing techniques to screen for these values. We've got companies, members that have put together core value coffee table books full of stories of core values that their employees and customers have lived. Give that to give it to your candidate. Say, come back when you come back next week, I want to talk about this. And you get a read on, whether it impacted them, whether they took it seriously, whether they laughed at it, whatever it was. And you can do other things within the process, kind of out of the norm, to determine whether they're a good fit. We've all heard the story of the CEO who, instead of interviewing the candidate, he puts him in the car and they go run errands. And through that process, he determines the value set of this person by the way they react in these different situations. So you can build mechanisms to do a very good screening on candidates that are going to be good fits for you. The worst thing you can do is bring somebody that's not a good fit. We all know that. It's hard to get rid of them and they're a cancer to your organization. So all that time up front, if you do it right, is a good investment of your time. So you can screen for values if you're intentional about looking for those things in people.
In the interview process.
I'm sorry?
In the interview process.
In the interview process, yes.
So David, I know you've been working on scorecards recently.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how, and the scorecards are essentially a job description that, in our kind of humble opinion, is better than a job description?
Yeah.
You talk about how a scorecard layout and how a role might fit into core values from a scorecarding perspective. Think of it as a job description.
Yeah, a scorecard obviously is much better than just a job description, let's call it. But included with every scorecard is a core values evaluation. So first of all, to be evaluated on the core value, I got to understand it. So if I know I'm going to be graded on these things, I'm going to put a lot more effort into understanding and living and believing in those values. So that's going to make me a better employee. And then there are some metrics, depending on the core value, they can be subjective or objective, but the candidate or the employee or the team member needs to know that they're going to be evaluated on these things. And we expect you to live these values in your position. So some of it is maybe a peer review. Some of it is there are some objective measures for those core values. So if, as we always say, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So you can measure adherence to core values through stories, through incidents, through some metrics. So the scorecard is equally important from the value side as it is in performance of your job responsibilities.
So if you've got, so the idea here is, especially for an organization that's going to be hiring in the future, having a set of core values that you can evaluate existing team members, and quickly you can get a return on your investment by saying, let's stop letting the wrong people into the organization. Now, what does the wrong people mean? We talk internally that, and with the people we coach, you're actually measured on two things, right? Like team member interaction behaviors, and you're measured on productivity. There's two things that we look at in human being. Most organizations are pretty good on measuring productivity. Most of them suck at measuring, how well do you interact with the team, your behavioral side, and core values is the way that you do that. And in the interview process, that's where you can get really quick return on it, is figuring out what are these things and then interviewing for a good fit. The question I like to put out there is, tell me about a time that, like David, tell me about a time that everything in experience every time meant something to you. When was the time that you created an over and above experience in anything in your life? Tell me about a time that you did that and it went really well and was well accepted. And tell me about a time that you did that it went really well and maybe it wasn't well accepted, right? So you can ask that question and fill in a core value just to get people talking about it. And if David doesn't have any stories about that, he might not be a good fit.
Exactly. One more point on that. I'll let you have it. Skill set is important, but I think we would all agree you hire for a values fit more so than you do a skill set fit. If it's a skill, they can be trained. If they're the right fit for your culture, probably a much better candidate than somebody that's highly talented, but not a good fit. You can't train core values necessarily, but you can train skills. I worked with an investment firm in Chicago when I was in banking. They rarely hired anybody out of the investment business. They hired school teachers and coaches and rocket scientists and everybody that was a right fit for their culture. And they trained them on the investment stuff. And they were a very successful, and it's a company you love to do business with because of that.
Yeah, I was going to add that, Andy, you're saying that quicker return in getting in hiring the right people is figuring out how to ask really good questions. As you said, one of the ways is to say, tell me a time. We got really good at my previous agency at taking our values and figuring out questions that people would never know that we're asking about this core value. Because especially in this era, if anybody's half decent, you can Google the company that you're going to interview at, find out what their values. They'll come in knowing that, okay, they should know that these values are here. So if we ask those, they're probably going to be a little bit well prepared. But we would get to asking questions that weren't directly saying, hey, tell me a time about this value. We would say, we're part of another organization, just as an example of where a core value was a thirst for learning. Right. So we got really good at asking people the questions like, oh, tell me about the last conference you went to, and what was a breakout session that you participated in, and what do you really take from it? Why was it cool? We were looking to see if they had this thirst for learning. Number one, did they go to conferences recently? Number two, can they recall a breakout session that went into, and what was, if they were engaged in that, if they came back and said, oh, this conference was X, Y, Z, didn't matter what the conference was or anything else, I'm seeing that they have this thirst for learning. If their response was, don't go to conferences, don't think they're valuable. Okay, and probably, again, it's not a perfect thing, but it's just, again, it's a question that doesn't have to be specifically directed at that core value. And I work with some of my members have done this. You can spend in half an hour, you can come up with a nice laundry list of questions around each core value, and it's kind of a fun process.
And then bringing it back to core purpose, and I want to shift gears for our last few minutes, but around core purpose, this would be why we do what we do, right? So it's the purpose of our organization. And I think really, really quick ROI on that is for decision making. So I know personally, I've been in rooms with C-suite executives when they're just batting around some kind of an idea about how are we going to do this? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do this? And they'll beat the shit out of that. And then I'll say something like, well, does it fulfill our purpose? Does it have good alignment to our core purpose? Yes or no? And if it does, continue the discussion. If it doesn't, stop the discussion. Like, it's just a very, very simple tool to use for decision making. And you can get the return on that in 10 seconds once you get that thing identified. This is what I want to make a switch to is core customer ideal client. So let's spend a few minutes. One of the things inside of the habits is clearly understanding. We call it, the habits call it a sandbox, right? The box in which you're going to play, but otherwise known as core customer or ideal client. So spend a few minutes talking through what's the best way to identify a core customer or an ideal client.
One of the things, obviously, that we work on with our members, and we've all done this as coaches, is if they've been in business for a while, we always make the statement, you have your ideal customer in your customer base already, even if you don't know that. And then you start putting, again, you're humanizing it. And we challenge everybody to think through their customer base, and you say, if I had 100 of those, you'd make a statement. If I had 100 of those, I could conquer the world. And you start whittling down and before you know it, everybody's got, oh, Jim over there, and I love him because, and Tom and Mary, and they come up with a list of 10 people that are real faces at customers. And from that, you're able to say, well, why do I like that person so much? It's not just because they pay me on time. It's because they believe in what we do and blah, blah, blah. So you've got everything you need. You just got to analyze what you got. And the beauty of knowing that clearly, to the point of, this guy goes to church on Sunday and he wears a suit and he drives this kind of car. the clearer you can get a picture of that, it goes back to decision making. Andy, you mentioned it. The more you can say no to the wrong customer, because you spend more time chasing the wrong customer than you do serving the good customer. So it gives you that ability to say no, 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 yes, no, 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 yes. And the more you can, the better you get at that, the better you can be at running your business.
Mark, you want to add?
Yeah. No, I'm just going to totally support that. I think it's about getting to know faster, right? So that you can get to the yeses. It's looking at, looking at, to add on to what David said, looking at not only kind of what's their, we did these persona developments, right? So what is it about them, the psychographic, demographic information of those best customers, and really understanding them. And you might have, Andy, to your point, we talked about the sandbox. There may be different areas within your sandbox. You might have a government sector, and the makeup of that government sector, a person is a little bit different than somebody who's in the consumer sector. That's okay to have different areas, and then to look at those and really understand within that area, what is it about those customers, those really core customers that makes them great customers. And I want to tie it back to, I will tell you that I have found in my business experience and in working with the members that the ones that tend to be the best customers are the ones that also align with your core values. If you can find out what your core customers' core values are, I will, I'm not going to guarantee, but I'm going to come pretty close that they're going to be more aligned with you than customers who are just paying you $1 for a product in return, dollars for hours.
And there's tangible and intangible in that conversation, right? So there's tangible, size of business, geographic location, number of these things, right? Industry specific. There's tangible and there's intangible. David mentioned pays on time. Maybe that's an intangible, maybe it's a tangible. Aligns with our core values, a bit of an intangible. Is pleasant to talk to on the phone, a little bit of an intangible.
Yeah.
Right? Returns my email when I email them for something, right? So there's things that they do. And yes, you can ask some of those questions. Hey, when we talk about, you mentioned interviewing for EO, membership in EO, right? So it's the exact same thing. What books are you reading? How quickly do you normally respond to an email? It's not an out of the ballpark question. Just ask, and you'll get a bit of an idea. Use this grid from time to time that talks about A clients, B clients, C clients, and D clients. And, we say, you love them and they love you. That's your A's, right? So you get over here to the B's, which is you love them, well, they may hate you. And then you got some hate going on down here. Everybody has clients in all four of these quadrants. What are you going to do about that? You want more A's than you want D's. Frankly, if you got a bunch of D's, then you need to be upping your fees because you got to put up with a bunch of BS, which goes along with that. A friend of mine had a business up in New York, and she did such a good job with this that they had a mannequin in the lobby whose name was Ken. To your point, David, Ken was completely dressed in the outfit of their ideal client. Had his little name badge, everything. So everybody knew every day, go find more Kens, go find more Kens, go find more Kens, because they had defined it down to that particular level. And I think if we can get core customer and ideal client down to that particular level, you can make better decisions. So really, really good.
I love that one. Hadn't heard that one before, Andy. I like that.
Yeah.
Ken, get more Kens.
It kind of boils down back to what we started with, guys. It's a relationship. You want your customer to be a relationship and not a transaction. And the more relationships you have, the better you're going to be as a business than just a transaction in and of itself.
Yep. Let's close on strategy for just a second, and we'll kind of tie it back to Buffalo and making moves and not just kind of waiting around. But this idea of, this disruption happening in my world, the way I used to do things is not the way that it's happening right now. I can wait it out, or I can make a change, right? And the idea that we've talked a lot about, especially in DSRO and some of the workshops that we've done, is to do an inventory. We use the SWET tool for this, but do an inventory of what you're really good at. What are your assets? What are the things that you have that are your strengths, the things that you do better than anybody else? And then look at the trends in the marketplace, right? Things are changing. Where do my assets fit with the trends? Like, it's almost as simple as that. And I do believe, and this will be my closing comments, I'll turn it over to you. I do believe that Those that will do that, take an inventory of their assets and look at the market and say, how's the market shifting? Make some educated guesses. There's going to be a guess, and start moving. Like the key I'm telling you is stop sitting around waiting on somebody else to come save you and figure out how you're going to, you're going to get back into a ball game. Go put yourself back in the ball game. Pick your targets and start making moves in a direction, even if it's the wrong damn direction. Like just start doing something and you'll figure it out as you go. That's the way businesses have always been built. We've set a target, we started moving towards them. Sometimes it was the wrong target, we had to make some adjustments. But sitting around waiting for something to somebody to show up at your doorstep and save you, it usually doesn't work out too well. What is it? The old saying, I'm the government, I'm here to help. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll latch on to that. I can't have any webinar without mentioning the word liquidity, to the old accountant in here. I think what Andy's saying is right. We need to be moving and we need to be proactive and finding ways to be better than we were before. But on the other side, we've got to make sure the old quote, undercapitalized, the best businesses, if they're undercapitalized, never make it. So you got to provide for this interim period, whether it's a year or 6 months or 2 years, so you can be able to do the things and get to the other side of this thing. So my mantra is liquidity, liquidity, liquidity right now. And I think everybody needs to be concerned about liquidity. And again, I come from an experience share in the banking business, where when the recession hit, we were calling lines of credit on A customers because we were preserving capital and could not stand the risk because of the mounting losses. So in a bad recession, the only people that can get a loan are the ones that don't need them. So now is the time to put liquidity on your balance sheet so you can do these pivots and these things you need to do to be better. So don't think you cannot be impacted. Hopefully you're not. But the worst thing you do is put your head in the sand and say, we're good. I don't need to worry about this, because there are resources out there like Main Street Lending and maybe another PPP round. Maybe you need to shut down a division that's very unprofitable. You may need to do some things because you've got to have the ability to get through this, because if you want to get better, and you got to have the capability to have the resources to allow you to get there.
Yeah, and learn that lesson this time around.
Yeah.
Don't if you're out of cash right now, it's because you didn't save enough cash.
Exactly.
If you're going through some pain personally because you are out of cash, remember that the next time, because everything is cyclical. When you come back out, be better for it and put yourself in a better position the next time.
Yeah.
And I say that with love in my heart because I made those mistakes prior. Mark, you get the last.
I think I won't speak for David, but I know you said it, and I did the same thing, Andy. We've all three been there, right? Made those bad decisions. We're here to help make better decisions and communicate and share those experiences. I think that one of the most pertinent ones that kind of ties what you're saying, David, of having a really good relationship with your banker. It mattered in the first round of the PPP, right? Those people who had really good relationships with their bankers were able to get in and get their applications in and receive funding. There's never, people who need the money won't get it. The people that don't need it were the ones that could get it. So agree with you. I'm going to close out with, just being a marketing and branding guy. I can't leave it here without, communicating that I think this is just such a great opportunity for businesses, right? There's a lot of unknown going on. I get it and understand that. But I never in my career or in my life have I known a time that was more ripe for businesses to be able to get their brand and market out to the consumer and have it be absorbed. In the past, people were very stuck in their patterns of, oh, I like this, product or service, whatever it is from X, Y, or Z. And it was really hard to get past that, mindset. Now people's mindsets have been blown apart with all that's going on. They're very receptive to messages. They may be new, they may be different. And, again, going to, you may be a business that is doing a pivot. That's the key word, but it's a great time to get out there and say who and what you are. People are open to it. Get your brand out there, get awareness of who and what you're doing, and then form that differentiation and preference as we go through and build over, the coming months and years.
All right, very cool. Well, listen, thank you guys for being here today. Lots of good information in there. There's some little nuggets that people can take away. We'll continue to build on this from a do-it-yourselfer perspective. People out there that are running our organizations, big and small. Join in, listen to, we'll obviously we'll take questions, or we're just going to make this thing up as we go like we always do. Thanks, guys. Great to see you. I'll see you at Huddle tomorrow.
Thank you. Nice to see you both. All right.